Vlade Divac. If flopping had a Mount Rushmore, Vlade Divac would probably be the first face carved into it. Divac played 16 NBA seasons from 1989 to 2005 and was one of the best passing centers of his generation. He made an all-star team, scored over 13,000 career points, and became a major piece for both the Lakers and Kings. But despite all those accomplishments, many fans remember him for one thing above everything else: the flops. Divac was doing things in the 1990s that players still copy today. He mastered the art of selling contact before it became common around the league. A player would barely bump him, and suddenly he'd be falling backward with his arms flying through the air like he had just been tackled by an NFL linebacker. The funny part was that Divac was 7 feet tall and weighed around 260 pounds. Yet somehow guards half his size could apparently send him flying. His flopping became especially famous during Sacramento's rivalry with the Lakers in the early 2000s. Every playoff game seemed to feature at least one ridiculous flop that left fans screaming at their televisions. Love him or hate him, Divac helped create the modern flopping blueprint. Manu Ginobili. Manu Ginobili is one of the most beloved international players ever. 4 NBA championships. 2-time All-Star. Olympic gold medalist. Hall of Famer. One of the greatest sixth men in basketball history. And somehow also one of the sneakiest floppers ever. What made Manu different was that he was actually one of the toughest players in the league. He dove for loose balls, sacrificed his body constantly, played through injuries. And then on the very next possession, he'd snap his head backward after minimal contact and somehow draw a foul. His Spurs teams became masters of exploiting every little advantage, and Manu was arguably their greatest actor. One of his favorite moves involved taking contact and exaggerating it just enough to convince referees something bigger had happened. The craziest thing is that because Manu was such a respected player, referees often gave him the benefit of the doubt. It frustrated opposing fans for years. James Harden. There may never be another player who changed foul drawing the way James Harden did. Harden is one of the greatest offensive players ever. MVP, multiple scoring titles. Over 25,000 career points. One of the greatest isolation scorers basketball has ever seen. But during his Houston years, he became the face of foul baiting. Defenders literally felt trapped. If they reached in, Harden got free throws. If they stayed back, he hit a 3. If they got close, he'd hook their arm. If they jumped, he'd launch himself into them. At one point, fans became so frustrated with Harden's tactics that entire YouTube compilations appeared showing nothing but his most ridiculous foul drawing moments. His signature move involved hooking a defender's arm and making it appear as if he was being fouled. It worked constantly. The NBA eventually modified officiating emphasis, partly because moves like Harden's were becoming too effective. That's how influential his flopping became. Chris Paul. Chris Paul might be the smartest basketball player on this list. 12-time All-Star. One of the greatest point guards ever. One of the highest IQ players in NBA history. And one of the most calculated floppers ever. Unlike some players who flop dramatically, Chris Paul operates like a scientist. Everything is deliberate. Everything is strategic. Everything is designed to manipulate the defense and the officials. Paul became famous for stopping suddenly in front of defenders, trapping them into awkward contact, and then immediately looking for the whistle. Players around the league constantly complained about it. Fans hated it, but it kept working. And because Paul was so intelligent, he always seemed to know exactly where the gray area in the rulebook was. That made him incredibly effective and incredibly annoying. Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart turned flopping into performance art. Smart built his reputation as one of the toughest defenders in basketball, Defensive Player of the Year, multiple all-defensive selections, heart and soul type player, but if we're being honest, some of his flops looked absolutely ridiculous. There were moments where Smart would get lightly brushed by an opposing player and somehow spin halfway across the court. Sometimes replays were so obvious that commentators would start laughing before the play even ended. Yet Smart continued doing it because it worked. His reputation as a defensive specialist often helped sell the call. Referees assumed contact must have been significant because Smart was such an aggressive defender. That combination made him one of the most successful floppers of the modern era. LeBron James. This one always causes arguments, because yes, LeBron James is one of the greatest players ever. 4 championships. 4 MVPs. NBA all-time scoring leader. One of the greatest athletes sports has ever seen. But some of LeBron's flops are legendary for all the wrong reasons. The most famous example came when a relatively small shove sent LeBron stumbling dramatically into the crowd. The internet exploded. Why? Because LeBron is built like a defensive end. He's 6'9" and around 250 pounds. Watching someone that size react like he'd been hit by a wrecking ball became instant meme material. LeBron's greatness often overshadows these moments, but over 2 decades in the NBA, he's produced more than enough flopping clips to earn a spot here. Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid might be the most controversial active flopper in basketball. The reason fans get so frustrated is simple. He's huge. Embiid is over 7 feet tall and weighs nearly 300 pounds. Yet somehow he spends more time on the floor than some guards. Now, to be fair, part of this is intentional. Embiid has openly discussed falling to reduce stress on his knees and lower body. But let's be honest, not every fall is for injury prevention. Some are absolutely designed to draw whistles. His MVP season featured countless moments where minimal contact somehow resulted in free throws. Opposing fans absolutely hate it. Philadelphia fans call it smart basketball. Either way, Embiid has become one of the defining foul drawers of this era. Reggie Miller. Before Harden, before Chris Paul, before Smart, there was Reggie Miller, one of the greatest shooters ever, Hall of Famer, 5-time All-Star, and one of basketball's earliest foul hunting specialists. Miller was incredibly crafty. He knew exactly how to use screens, exactly how to create contact, exactly how to force defenders into impossible situations. One of his most famous tricks involved kicking his legs forward while shooting. Years later, countless shooters would use similar techniques. Reggie wasn't necessarily the most dramatic flopper ever, but he was absolutely one of the pioneers. Draymond Green. Draymond Green is one of the most emotional players in basketball history. 4-time champion. Defensive Player of the Year. Future Hall of Famer. Constant source of controversy. Draymond loves physical basketball, until someone gets physical with him. Then suddenly he's looking at the referee with complete disbelief. Many of his funniest flops happen after contact with players much smaller than him. Despite being one of the strongest defenders in basketball, he occasionally reacts as though a point guard just launched him across the court. Combined with his non-stop arguing with referees, it has created countless viral moments. Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry was arguably the greatest charge drawer of his generation. NBA champion. 6-time All-Star, franchise icon in Toronto, and an absolute master at selling contact. Lowry built an entire defensive reputation around taking charges. The problem? Sometimes the charges looked a little suspicious. Many fans noticed that Lowry occasionally seemed to start falling before the actual collision even happened. Yet referees rewarded him constantly because he was so good at positioning himself. That made him one of the most effective and frustrating defenders in basketball. Gilgeous-Alexander. This is where newer NBA fans might get upset, but Gilgeous-Alexander absolutely belongs in this conversation. Now, before anyone gets angry, Shai is an incredible player. MVP caliber superstar, elite scorer, one of the best guards in basketball, the face of Oklahoma City's resurgence. But one of the biggest criticisms of his game is how often he gets to the free throw line. Shai has become extremely skilled at creating and exaggerating contact. He constantly uses hesitation moves, sudden stops, and crafty body positioning to put defenders in difficult situations. Many of these fouls are legitimate, but others have sparked major debate among fans. Some of his most controversial moments involve snapping his head backward after contact, or suddenly changing direction into defenders to generate whistles. As his star power has grown, so have the complaints from opposing fan bases. And when a player is regularly near the top of the league in free throw attempts, people start paying attention. 12. Kevin Durant. Finally, we have Kevin Durant. Durant doesn't get mentioned as often as Harden or Embiid, but he's quietly built a long history of selling contact in 2 championships, League M5P, 4 scoring titles, one of the greatest pure scorers ever. And yet, there have been countless moments where minor contact somehow sends him stumbling backward while searching for a whistle. What makes Durant's flopping especially funny is that he's nearly 7 feet tall. He's one of the most unstoppable scorers ever. He doesn't need help, and yet he'll still occasionally exaggerate contact like everybody else. That combination makes his flopping moment stand out even more. If you made it this far, comment below who you think is the worst flopper in the NBA currently.